This story, titled The Breaking Point. It was a cold, crisp fall afternoon when I sat down in our cozy living room, nestled between the faintly crackling fireplace and the scent of cinnamon candles flickering on the mantel. The world outside was turning shades of amber and gold as the trees shed their leaves, but inside I felt the weight of something that had been slowly unraveling for a while. My partner and I had been together for 4 years. 4 years that felt like a lifetime of memories, laughter, struggles, and shared dreams. Yet on this ordinary afternoon, my world was about to be shaken in a way I never expected. I'm Samantha, 42, a woman who had always believed in the power of commitment. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other's business, where love was a promise and vows were meant to last. My parents had been married for 35 years before my father passed away. I always imagined my life would follow a similar path. Steady, predictable, filled with partnership, a warm home, and a future that we would build together, brick by brick. And then I met David. He was different from anyone I'd ever known, charming, spontaneous, full of life and adventure. He swept me off my feet in the most unexpected way. At first, it was lighthearted, weekend trips, spontaneous dinner dates, late-night walks under the stars. But soon it deepened. We shared our dreams, fears, and deepest hopes for the future. I remember the day we talked about marriage for the first time. We were in the middle of a quiet conversation about what it meant to commit, to be together forever. He had looked at me with a soft smile, his eyes filled with a gentle certainty, and said, "I want to be with you for the rest of my life." Those words, they echoed in my heart. I believed him. I thought, just like I had imagined, we were building a future together. We bought a house, a beautiful little cottage in the suburbs, the kind of place you dream of raising children in. We decorated it, filled it with laughter, the smell of fresh coffee in the mornings, and the quiet hum of contentment. I imagined us growing old together, our lives intertwining more and more with every passing day. But this afternoon, everything felt off. The air in the room was thick with an unspoken tension, like a storm was approaching. David had been distant for a few weeks, pulling away in subtle yet noticeable ways. I'd brushed it off at first, thinking it was just work stress, or maybe the seasonal change making him more reflective. But now, as I sat across from him in the soft glow of the room, I could see it clearly. Something was shifting. Then the words came. "I don't believe in marriage," he said, his voice low and steady, but carrying a weight that hit me like a brick to the chest. It was as if the ground beneath me cracked open, and I was falling into a void. My mind scrambled to comprehend what he had just said. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to hold it together. He looked at me, his eyes calm, yet distant, like he had made a decision long ago and was finally ready to share it with me. "I mean exactly that. After everything, I don't believe in the idea of marriage. I think it's just a piece of paper, a social construct. It doesn't define love or commitment," he explained. I felt a shiver run through me. The words didn't make sense, not in the way he was speaking them. I had never expected this. Never expected the man I thought I would marry, the man I imagined standing beside me through thick and thin, to tell me that the very concept of what we were building wasn't important to him. 4 years. 4 years of shared moments, promises, plans for the future, and now, nothing. My heart was beating in my throat, but I couldn't breathe. "But we talked about it," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "We talked about a future together, about getting married, about making a life with each other." My mind raced, replaying every moment that had led up to this point. Had I missed the signs? Had there been something I hadn't seen? Why didn't he tell me sooner? David looked down, avoiding my gaze. "I didn't want to hurt you, Sam. I thought maybe I could change my mind, but I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I just can't do it. I can't live up to the expectations of marriage. I love you, but this is where I stand." The room felt smaller suddenly. The walls seemed to close in on me as if they were suffocating the life from the conversation. I wanted to yell, to cry, to demand answers, but instead, I sat there in stunned silence. A million thoughts crashed through my mind. Was I not enough? Had I misinterpreted everything? Was I just fooling myself into believing that we were working toward the same goal, when in fact, we were on completely different paths? I don't know how much time passed before I found my voice again, but when I did, it was quieter than before, trembling with hurt. "So, what does this mean for us, David? What happens now?" His response was as calm as it was heartbreaking. "I don't know, Sam. I still care about you, But I can't give you what you want. I can't give you marriage. I can't promise that. And there it was, the crushing finality of his words. The dream of a shared future, of growing old together, had shattered in an instant. In the span of a few minutes, everything I thought we had worked toward, our home, our love, our plans for the future, had crumbled like dust in the wind. I thought we were building something, but now it felt like I was the only one holding up the weight of what we had once hoped for. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to feel. My heart was torn between the love I still had for him and the deep ache of betrayal. I had believed in this relationship, in the foundation we had built, but now it felt like I was standing on shaky ground, not knowing if the next step would be the one that made me fall. I had to make a choice, but I didn't know what that choice was. How could I move forward when everything I thought I understood about our relationship had been upended? How could I walk away from everything we had built? And yet, how could I stay when I realized that the very future I had envisioned wasn't what he wanted at all? As the evening wore on, the silence between us was unbearable. We didn't speak much after that, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I retreated to the bedroom, my mind still spinning with confusion, hurt, and disbelief. As I lay there in the dark, I couldn't shake the thought that perhaps this was the end of everything I had hoped for. Maybe love wasn't enough. Maybe, just maybe, the future we had built together wasn't meant to be. The days after that conversation were a blur, a strange mix of numbness and disbelief. It felt like I was moving through the motions of life, but nothing really seemed real anymore. I would wake up every morning to the same familiar sights: the warm rays of sunlight filtering through the curtains, the smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. But everything had changed. There was a heaviness in the air, a distance between David and me that hadn't been there before. I kept replaying his words in my mind, searching for any hint of something I could hold on to, any small thread of hope that we could find a way through this. But with each passing day, I realized that the distance between us wasn't something I could easily bridge. David wasn't the same person I had fallen in love with. He seemed distant, withdrawn, almost like a shadow of the man I had known. I would ask him if we could talk, if we could try to figure things out, but he would always brush me off, telling me that he just needed time to think. Time. Time had never seemed so cruel. Time was the thing that was slowly unraveling everything we had built together. I had spent so much of our relationship convinced that time would heal everything, that the years we had spent together, the memories we had made, would be enough to withstand any storm. But this was different. This was a storm I couldn't weather alone. The truth was, I didn't know if I wanted to. One night, after a long day of work, I found myself sitting alone at the kitchen table, staring at the cold cup of tea in front of me. The silence in the house felt suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in around me. I had been holding on to a fragile hope for so long, but I was starting to realize that hope was all I had left. The reality was staring me in the face. David didn't believe in marriage. He didn't believe in the future we had once talked about, and no amount of wishing or hoping was going to change that. I needed answers. I needed to know where I stood in this relationship, if there was even a future for us anymore. So I did what I had been avoiding for days. I approached David, who was sitting on the couch, flicking through the channels on the TV, lost in his own world. I could feel the anxiety building in my chest, but I knew I couldn't wait any longer. "David," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't look at me, didn't even acknowledge that I had spoken. But I couldn't stop now. "We need to talk. I can't keep living like this, not knowing where we stand." He sighed deeply, almost as if he had been expecting this conversation for some time. Finally, he put the remote down and looked up at me, his eyes filled with exhaustion. "What do you want me to say, Sam?" His tone was resigned, like he had already made up his mind. "I don't believe in marriage. I don't believe in the promises that come with it. I never have." My heart sank. I had heard those words before, but now they felt different. They felt like the final nail in the coffin, sealing our fate. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "But we've talked about it so many times. We've talked about a life together, about building a family, about growing old together." My voice cracked, and I quickly wiped away a tear that had escaped. I thought that's what we both wanted. David looked away, unable or unwilling to meet my gaze. "I know, Sam, I know. But somewhere along the way, I realized that I don't want the same things you do. I can't give you what you need. I can't be the person you want me to be." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just that he didn't want marriage. It was that he didn't want the life I had envisioned. The future I had dreamed of, with him by my side, was slipping through my fingers, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I stood there, frozen, my heart breaking as the reality of what was happening settled in. "So what does this mean? Are you leaving me?" I asked, my voice trembling. David's silence answered the question before he even spoke. He shook his head slowly. "I don't know. I don't want to leave you, but I don't know how to move forward with this. I don't want to hurt you, Sam, but I think we're on different paths now." I felt as though the ground beneath me was shifting, the very foundation of my life crumbling. I had built everything around this relationship, the house, the plans, the hopes for the future. And now, I was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure if I should take the leap or turn back and try to rebuild from the wreckage. The next few days were a blur of emotional turmoil. I tried to make sense of everything, tried to reconcile the love I still felt for David with the reality that we were no longer on the same page. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't ignore the truth. We were drifting apart. I couldn't change him, and he couldn't change me. Our paths had diverged, and there was no going back. I spent a lot of time reflecting during those days. What did I want out of life? Did I want to keep holding on to something that was no longer there? Or did I have the strength to let go and move on? It wasn't easy. It never is. But as I sat alone in the quiet of my home, I realized something important. I couldn't let the fear of being alone keep me in a relationship that wasn't fulfilling. I had to take control of my own future. The decision to end things wasn't an easy one. It wasn't something I had ever imagined I would have to do. But after 4 years of love, heartbreak, and soul-searching, I knew it was time to let go. Letting go didn't mean I stopped loving him. It simply meant that I had to love myself enough to move forward. I don't know where my journey will take me from here. I don't know what the future holds. But I do know this. I deserve a love that honors who I am, a love that shares the same dreams and hopes for the future. And that is something I refuse to settle for anything less than. If this story resonates with you, like, comment, and subscribe.